it's Mark Rutte here, headquarters NATO Chief of Staff. And I just got viral, yay! Because my good friend Donald J. Trump, he retweeted a message from me to him about his great leadership concerning Syria. Syria, yes, new leaders there. You did very well, Donald. The new leaders there, who are, by the way, all old Al-Qaeda leaders. But that's something else. Water under the bridge, as we say. I'm in Davos already, by the way, preparing my speech concerning the Greenland matter. Yes, of course. What a gedoe, hè, Donald? Oh, Greenland. Well, I'm going to watch that video for you, Donald. As long as you keep reposting my messages to you, there's something in it for you and something in it for me. Okay, love you, Donald. See you after love you, great leadership. You're the peacemaker. Yes, perfect. Bye.
What's up, guys? Welcome to a Rescue Michigan Wednesday night live stream. We didn't have one last Sunday. I am still a little bit under the weather. It's been some crazy weather, but happy to be joined tonight by Shane. We've got a lot to talk about. The big stories, of course, are, well, one was that insane World Economic Forum meeting last week in Davos. We'll have some jokes about that. But then, of course, the other big thing, the other big topic for tonight is going to be the latest developments with ICE, the ICE shootings. We have controversially titled this stream, "Everybody is Wrong About the ICE Shooting," which I intend to prove tonight. Actually, I'm just seeing we're having trouble getting on Facebook for some reason, so don't know about that. Guess I can't help it. Maybe I'll try to post it again later on Facebook. But in the meantime, I guess we're only alive on YouTube and Rumble and X. So for those of you who are joining us, good to see you. How you doing, Shane? How you been, man?
Good. Just been watching all the developments in the world happen, and just trying to cope.
Yeah, I feel like something really catastrophic is coming very, very soon. And
you look at the silver and gold prices.
I know. 2 weeks ago, gold was $4,500 an ounce, which, as it was, is insane. $5,100 today. Yeah, that's very, very, very concerning.
Canary in the coal mine type stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
I know you can kind of be like, oh, you guys have predicted World War III over and over again. You've predicted economic despair over and over again, and it never seems to come. But
I've never seen the price of metals do anything like this.
No.
This is crazy.
So yeah, you can be alarmist, but a lot of times there is something to be alarmed about, and the writing's been on the wall for these things for quite some time, and it's just a matter of it seems like an inevitability before the debt and the deficit, the inflation, all these different things that have happened come to a head, and the gold and silver prices on the economic front indicate that something big's about to happen, and not in a good way for the dollar.
Yeah, and of course, it's looking more and more like an attack on Iran is imminent. Which I'm surprised Iran doesn't just preempt us and attack us right now, given we've made absolutely clear we're about to attack them. But because that's the preemption doctrine. But I guess
and Iran,
right.
I guess the protests are still going on. I don't know if they're raging like they were a few weeks ago. There's always and again, I don't want to seem like I'm apologizing for their regime. Their regime is not good in many respects, maybe every respect, but a lot of the people who are trying to sow discord and foment these protests is the same kind of color revolution model that's been done in all these different areas, like the Arab Spring, and with Ukraine getting rid of their neutral government, replacing it with a Western puppet. So it's best just not to meddle in these countries and deal with their internal politics at all. But obviously, the administration has put their sights on Iran, bombed them supposedly to cripple their nuclear capabilities that they said that they were right on the cusp of doing for 30 years or whatever, but never
Which
seemed to
is
quite come to
completely
fruition.
backfired, because now we have no idea what the nuclear capabilities are, because now the IAEA is not there anymore. It went from having inspectors there watching everything they were doing to having nobody there.
Yeah, and then they, shifted the goalposts from, nuclear weapons to ballistic missiles, and
Yeah.
now we have to stand with the protesters. So there's just a constant pulling of President Trump to get more involved, by Netanyahu, by the people like Senator Lindsey Graham, who are constantly in Trump's ear. Trump and him are golfing buddies, talking every day. Trump has Fox News on, listening to the war drums beat constantly. So, this is the situation that we're in, and they're slowly being dragged into this a scenario that could be another regime change. And then look what happened. What happened when we took when the West took out Mossadegh in I believe it was the 1950s, put in the Shah, and then once the people got sick of the Shah, that's what put the Islamic rebels, the radicals, into place. For the past 5 decades or whatever it is now. So a lot of these things have cascading negative impacts, and people will be rah-rahing. They'll be saying that it's mission accomplished and everything's so great 1 week after, but
I don't think they'll be saying that in this case.
Year after or 10 years after.
Yeah, I think. Well, first off, I think there's at this point there's no way they're not going to try something dumb. And I have no idea. I have no expectation that it's going to go the way they think it will. But I guess we'll see. In the meantime, let's.
One more thing. And one of the worries that I think last time we had the stream that I was on here was that the success of getting rid of Maduro, so easily would people would be in Trump's ear saying, "Oh, look at how easy it was to get rid of Maduro. We can get rid of whoever's in charge of Cuba now after Castro, and whoever the Islamic regime in Iran. We can just take them out, and easy as a cakewalk." So I think that that's the danger, is that the momentum in favor of more military operations is building, and then it's going to draw us into more conflicts and wars.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, I guess first off, we got to talk about the big story, which is this latest in the ICE debacle, which, the reason why I say everyone's getting this story wrong is because I think, generally speaking, there's pretty much like two camps in this whole in this whole discussion. There's the people on the left who are saying, "Oh, these poor innocent protesters were just standing around minding their own business, just filming the ICE people when they were just brutally murdered." And then on the other hand, you have the Trump washers saying these are domestic terrorists, and they were trying to murder as many people as they possibly could that day.
How dare they have a gun while protesting?
And how dare they show up to a protest with a gun? So I think we need to first. I mean, here's why I say both sides are wrong, because I think, there's two questions here. One question is, was the shooting of Alex Pretti justified? That's the one big question for the current event of the day. But then the other question is, just because if the shooting was lawful, does that mean that ICE isn't being completely incompetently managed? And is the Trump administration now completely fucking all of this up? Which is a whole separate question. So I think the place to start is with the shooting itself. So I want to actually kind of play a longish clip, because the real expert on this is Andrew Branca, who's the law of self-defense. Literally, he wrote the book on self-defense. And I was going to just use the clip that he was using to reference to talk about it. But actually, I thought, let's just let him narrate it, because he goes through it pretty well. It's the incident only took place in the space of like less than 1 minute. And he lays out, like, first off, the single elements, the single question with of the whether or not the shooting is justified legally is, were the police, the ICE agents, in reasonable fear of imminent deadly force harm coming to them? And here's how he breaks it down. So let me pull the clip up here, and if you need to, just tell me to pause it. Here we go.
Pauses along the way. So what I see here this is Alex Pretti. He's standing in the middle of the street. He's appears to be cooperating with some others and just attempting to disrupt what's happening here. This is not like a protest where they're out in front of a building holding signs and stuff. The Customs Border Patrol people went to this particular address to arrest a particular person, and they're following CBP to disrupt that operation, is my understanding. So it's him, it's a woman in a white coat, and a woman in a brown coat are the three people on his side of this thing. So we'll see a car go past Alex Pretti, and when the car goes past them, he starts advancing pretty aggressively towards the CBP people, yelling at them, yelling questions at them, filming them. It's just what they do. And then we'll see the camera tilts down to the snow, and when it comes back up, of course, the scene has changed a little bit. Alex Pretti will have his arm around the woman in the brown jacket, kind of moving her towards the sidewalk. So that's what we should see. Let me move this over here in this little piece before the number changes to the number 2. Oh, and I slowed it down so we can watch it more leisurely. I muted that because the woman's just cursing a lot. We don't need. Okay, so that's that first segment. Now, in the second segment, we have the first, I just call him CBPA, the first Customs and Border Patrol officer here. It appears to be ordering Miss Whitejacket off the street onto the sidewalk. Obviously, they're running a law enforcement operation here, so they're trying to maintain scene security, keep people at a certain distance. A good way to keep people at a distance is to have kind of a bright line test for them, right? Not move back a couple feet, but get off the street, get onto the sidewalk. That's very clear for everybody. She doesn't want to do that. She doesn't comply. So the CBP officer shoves her off the street onto the sidewalk. That's what happens here. All right. So that shove happens, and then Alex Pretti steps in and impedes the CBP officer. He actually lays hands on the CBP officer. I have a different angle on that here that makes it pretty clear that's what happens. So I think it's pretty incontestable that Alex Pretti is making contact with that border. Now, he may think he's protecting the woman or whatever the case may be. I'm not
Can you pause it real quick?
Malice, but he's making contact.
Sorry, what's that?
And so, yeah, just that, what he's doing there, and we'll discuss this more, is a de-arresting type tactic that is being trained to these protesters by, the Antifa-aligned, Antifa-style operatives who are putting this stuff out. So this is like a de-arresting tactic where you're supposed to impede ICE to prevent them from arresting people and from doing deportations. This thing is like these ideas are putting people in harm's way deliberately so they can have these sort of situations where there's, ICE might, deploy lethal force, might overreact so that they can get their headline. And it's all part of a plan. They use these people as useful idiots on the ground to enact that plan. Yeah,
and the unfortunate thing is people often don't understand these legal nuances when they go out to violently confront police, and they're taught. It's like on the right when people say you don't really have to pay taxes. You don't really have to obey the federal government if you don't want to. You don't really need a driver's license. This is that same kind of idea. They poison people with these notions. If the government's evil, just ignore them. Just you're allowed to. There's secret techniques that are not taught in civics class that you can. If you know these secret techniques, you can actually prevent the police from arresting somebody. Very, very stupid. Very, very dangerous. And yeah, that's what they're teaching people. So here's the whole article in the New York Post about how Renee Good, who was shot by police as she was, and again, in that similar case, she probably didn't understand that being in a moving vehicle posed a deadly force threat to the police officer who's right in front of her, but that's what they were seeing in front of them. So,
and Pretti was also in that or a very similar group. So they're all very coordinated. They're all on signal. They're all receiving these marching orders, and they're being told that, oh, this is what you need to do. And the people who are telling it to them are cynically programming them to do this, knowing that they're going to be putting themselves in harm's way because they know that the confrontation can be exploited, just like it was with George Floyd and whoever else, and that they can use this to continue to escalate and hopefully force the Trump administration to back down. Yeah,
there's no question this is an organized effort. Mike Benz has a whole detailed article about how paramilitary it is. Here's James O'Keefe saying something similar. He's saying, I've never experienced anything quite like today in my life. This is from just a few days ago. I've interacted with the cartel and I've witnessed some crazy things in the desert in 2024. But what strikes me is how organized these agitators in Minneapolis are. They have spotters everywhere in the city and suburbs, on street corners, even 30 minutes away from downtown. The people at hotels that work with them and signal to them, which made it difficult for us to lose our tail once my cover was blown. Usually I can lose a tail, not this time. He goes on here. It's a long post. But
and yeah, they have a national network. They can tap into this at any time. They can flip a switch, and they'll have their organizers who know how to set this thing up. They'll have them be there. They'll have, tons of people wanting to get involved, useful idiots, people who see, Instagram or TikTok reels and feel, they're tugged on their heartstrings. They'll show up and they'll be the boots on the ground, the useful idiots who will put themselves in these dangerous situations thinking that they're the hero in the Marvel movie in their minds. So this is, you look at like Reddit, you read what these people have to say. These are mainstream liberals, and they are absolutely psychotic, and they're the foot soldiers for this Bolshevist style operation that works it with military precision to take over cities and throw out law enforcement, whether it's local, state, federal. They have moles within the government, within all these different institutional power structures that are feeding them information. Like O'Keefe said, they had all the information for the license plate readers to be able to get all that information on people and track people. They're being fed that from somewhere on the inside. So this is, the way this is metastasized should terrify everyone.
Yeah, I mean, if you can imagine, like if you're just set out to try to impede your local law enforcement, which is like what these people are doing, I wouldn't know where to start, like this was not like a planned ICE event where somehow these people just showed up to disrupt. The ICE agents were engaging in an arrest of somebody, and somehow these multiple individuals knew where to go. They're coordinated. You can see they've had some sort of training. They're blowing whistles and screaming and yelling and making a scene. They're trying to draw people's attention to this. This is clearly an organized effort. So anyway, let's let this analysis continue here. Here we go.
To impede that officer's ability to interact with Miss White Jacket. Let's see. That gets us to. Oh, I should mention. So, under federal statute 18 USC 111, if you impede a federal law enforcement officer in the course of their duties and you do it with contact, that's an 8-year federal felony. So this is a forcible felony that has now been committed against this CBP officer. So that's obviously an arrestable offense. Even if there was no contact, it would still be a Class A misdemeanor. Still in the presence of the officers, they're allowed to make an arrest there. So this CBP officer says, well, I'm escalating up the use of force continuum. I gave her a verbal command. She wouldn't listen. I shoved her, and I'm still getting resistance from people with her. So now I'm going to escalate up to a chemical irritant, which is here. The OC comes out, sprays Alex. Now remember, he's subject to arrest now. So these other CBP officers start coming in, and everyone's going to get in. White coat, the woman in the white coat tries to get up out of the snow. Brown jacket is helping her. The other CBP officers are coming up, and you can hear them shouting, get back to these two. More pepper spray is deployed here. You hear it?
I don't hear anything.
I don't hear it, but
you can't hear it?
Oh,
my gosh. I forgot to switch the video. Hold on.
But we I've seen the video, so
that's okay. But everyone, I want the audience to see.
Right.
Yes,
it only takes a few seconds. So here's the push. Here's Alex Pretti intervening. Here's the pepper spray. And that catches up back up to speed.
Okay.
And we already covered white coat trying to get back up. More pepper spray. That must be nice. All right. So at this point, the officers are putting hands on Alex Pretti. They're looking to arrest him. He's trying to help the
Pretti.
woman in the white. Pretti. Sorry, Petri is a dish. Yeah. Pretti. The officers are trying. They have hands on Pretti. Pretti's trying to pull the woman up. So the officers are pulling him up. They're trying to secure his arrest. And at this point, they pull him off the woman. They get him on his knees on the ground. He immediately pops back up. And then they get him back on the ground again. And we see at least 3 officers now are trying to gain control of Alex Pretti as he continues to resist lawful arrest.
Nicole, the fuck is wrong with you? Honestly.
Okay, so there's 2 important people here now. There's the guy in the middle crouching over. I call him Gray Jacket. And there's the guy in the green here, whose back at the moment is to Alex Pretti. He's still dealing with White Jacket. These 2 people are important because Gray Jacket is going to be the guy who secures the gun off of Alex Pretti. And Green Jacket is going to be the guy who pulls the service revolver, the first guy we see in the video. He's going to, we'll see as Gray Jacket is working on getting the gun, searching Pretti. Green shirt is going to turn around, so he's facing Alex Pretti. Right now, he's facing the opposite direction. At this point now, Gray Jacket observes Pretty's pistol. He sees the pistol at the 4 o'clock position. He decides he's going to secure that. He grabs it, and there's a lot of shouts of gun, gun, gun. Now, it sounds weird because they don't say it that slowly. They say it like gun, 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 gun. It sounds almost like a machine gun, but that's what they're saying. And the moment that shout goes out, the guy in the green shirt puts his hand on his service pistol and starts to present that service pistol.
It's worth pointing out in this particular moment here that all of these people screaming and yelling are contributing to people perceiving an environment of total chaos, right? Like,
Yep.
if someone's now shouting gun, 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 and there's people blowing whistles and screaming and yelling, the cops are going to have to assume the worst because they are not in control of the situation.
And that's the entire point, is to make it as stressful and chaotic of a situation as possible, to compel situations like these that can be exploited for narrative purposes, for political purposes, and to, you know, give the Bolsheviks more of a foothold in what they're trying to do to overthrow society.
Yep. Okay. So here's the conclusion here.
So now the guy in the gray jacket has got Alex Pretty's pistol, and he's going to distance himself from the scene of the fight because that's what you want to do. You want to get the uncontrolled gun away from the scene of the fight. The guy in the green jacket, in the green shirt, has drawn his service pistol. He's presented it. He's now pointing it, presumably, at Alex Pretti. The next step is, as Gray Jacket moves away from this fight with Alex Pretty's gun in his hand, we hear a gunshot. Now, I don't know to this moment if we know where that gunshot actually came from. It might have come from Gray Jacket. It might have been an accidental discharge. It might have been. I just don't think that we know. I don't think it matters for legal analysis purposes. But that's when we hear the first shot. And when we hear that first shot, all the officers start to jump away from Alex Pretti because that's what you do. Now it's a gunfight. You want to distance yourself. You want to give yourself room to draw your own pistol and neutralize the threat and so forth. That's the first shot. Now, we don't really know, again, where it comes from, but within a second of that first shot, then we get 3 more shots fired, presumably by officers. And those shots come in pretty quick succession. During these shots, the period these 3 shots are being fired, we can see Alex Pretti has a black object in his hands. This is a freeze frame from that 3-shot period. So he's got a black object. I'm not saying it's a weapon, but it could be a cell phone. Some people say it's a magazine, one of his spare magazines. I don't know what it is, but it's an object in his hand, and he carries it all the way to the ground with him. So he still has it when he hits the ground. And I would suggest that given the circumstances up to this point, the cries of gun, 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 an unanticipated gunshot, and then they see this guy, his hand coming from the 4 o'clock position where his holster was. Because you have to remember, not every officer here knows all the things every other officer does, right? Not every officer here will necessarily know that Gray Jacket has secured the pistol. When Gray Jacket turns away, he very quickly turns his back on a bunch of the officers, right? They may not know he's got Alex Pretti's pistol in his hand. So we have those 3 shots. We know that Alex Pretti has a black object in his hand. It's coming from where his gun was holstered. Some of those cops are going to see that black object immediately after hearing gun, 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 and hearing a gunshot. And then within seconds of those 3 shots that come out, we hear another shot, and then we hear a series of 5 shots, and that's when we get to the end of all this. That's the 3. So that's the 10 shots in total. Now, the legal standard for whether or not this use of force was justified is, did the officers who fired their shots, did they have a reasonable, not a correct necessarily, we don't require perfection in the use of defensive force, but a reasonable, based on the application of their powers of reason to the evidence they're seeing, the things they're hearing, did they have a reasonable perception that Alex Pretti was presenting as an imminent unlawful threat of deadly force harm? If the answer to that is yes, well, even more important than that, the prosecution would have to disprove that proposition beyond any reasonable doubt. And what that effectively means is that if you can look at this video or the collection of evidence, and there is a narrative consistent with the evidence that's consistent with reason, then by definition, there's a reasonable doubt and there cannot be a conviction. As a matter.
All right. So that's the essence of it. And you notice he went to great pains to point out that all of the people that are saying they could not possibly have legally shot him because he had already been disarmed, don't understand what the standard for self-defense is. It's not that you have perfect judgment and know that the person is armed and dangerous. It's that you can reasonably believe they might yet still be an immediate personal deadly threat to you, which is what he proved himself to have been when he assaulted the police officers while carrying a gun. Like that's kind of where this whole thing kicked off. Like,
let me add, this Bronco guy, I never heard of him until I saw Robert Barnes attacking him on X. Seems I was very surprised at Barnes.
Every single gun owner should know Andrew Branca, and they should have his book. Absolutely. I'm sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was surprised to see Barnes kind of crash out on this. A lot of libertarians too have been very just reflexively, emotionally, siding with the so-called peaceful protester. I understand, the people who've been around for a long time. They've seen Ruby Ridge, they've seen Waco, they've seen the Bundy Ranch standoff. They've seen federal thugs come in and do these horrible acts against innocent people or people who weren't a threat and commit these atrocities, and they kind of flip back into that mode.
A lot of libertarians and a lot of lefties, like Glenn Greenwald, they love to compare this incident to Waco and Ruby Ridge. The distinction is the people at Waco and Ruby Ridge wanted to be left alone by the government. They didn't go into the government in their course of duties armed and try to impede them from doing their constitutional duties.
And
enforcing immigration law is a lawful purpose of government.
And another weird thing I've seen, particularly with lefties and some libertarians who are against intervention, is that they've tried to connect this with the IDF and with Israel somehow, as if the IDF and Israel are training ICE to bring those sort of tactics they use against the Palestinians to the homeland. So I've seen
that particular line of genius came from Thomas Friedman. liberal Zionists are a little bit out there, a little kooky for my taste. But
Yeah,
I did see there was a clip from Glenn Greenwald. I actually kind of do want to show it just for a bit because it was just to give you a sense of the kind of bigotry that you see with the lefties as they describe this kind of incident. So let me pull this up here. This is Glenn Greenwald on Sagar and Jetty's show Breaking Points, and these guys are all liberals. So here's Glenn Greenwald.
Oh, they're letting Greenwald back on MSNBC now.
No, this is a web show. It's not MSNBC.
Oh, okay.
But anyway,
one thing I was thinking about actually this morning was the fact that I was kind of pointing out the oddity of the right, the American right, suddenly cheering for and even demanding armed federal agents on the street. Because if we look at the politics of the 1990s, and of course Bill Clinton was president then, this kind of anti-federal government strain was very dominant on the right in the wake of things like Randy Weaver and Waco and other things that if people aren't familiar with, they should go back and read. And then it, really occurred to me, a lot of them are saying, well, now it's different because we have these illegal aliens we have to deport. But it's always different. Authoritarians always find some pretext.
You see the strawman argumentation he's using there? Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is like they're saying this. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying you should not be murdered by federal agents in your own home. You also should not be murdered by federal agents unless perhaps you try to, violently confront them when you are yourself armed with a deadly weapon. And coordinating with a whole left-wing movement, like across the country, in particular in Minnesota, which is like, you think the ICE people don't know about this?
It's very disingenuous. It's very disingenuous. People like Glenn Greenwald, they try to use the principles that conservatives or libertarians have against you in situations like this as a cudgel to try to get you to submit to their narrative. He obviously supports what the anti-ICE people are doing. Greenwald, he's great on a lot of different issues, does a lot of great work on civil liberties, but when the rubber meets the road on issues like this, you really see that these leftists who might be friendly on certain issues, they'll fall in line with their comrades on these sort of tactics that will lead to total societal annihilation when it counts.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, though, I should say is I think the problem, again, this comes down to that everyone's got this binary thinking. And on one hand, this incident absolutely, I would agree with Andrew Branco that this was a justified use of deadly force. Also, by the way, even if it wasn't a lawful use of deadly force, that still wouldn't mean that we shouldn't want immigration laws enforced and we shouldn't be concerned about the left essentially taking the law into their own hands and saying we're going to violently obstruct and impede the federal government. However, and here's where it gets really complicated, I also think that the way the government's handled this is extremely stupid. And by the way, we probably should worry a little bit about martial law with Donald Trump, who, of course, goes out of his way to say he doesn't think the law applies to him. Just this past week, he says, I don't think the only thing that limits me is my own conscience, Trump actually said. That is a very dangerous attitude that we shouldn't want the government to have. And I think the problem we have with this set of issues is that everyone's going to fall all the way on one side or the other. And I'm in this weird camp where on one hand, I don't think we should, I don't think that we should just ignore federal immigration law and that, yes, the government does need to deal with these protesters, but the way that they are handling this is absolutely bonkers. So we have, first off, you have Kash Patel, who goes on air. Let me find this clip of Kash here. Here's Kash. Here's what Kash has to say.
Thousands of people are marching through Minneapolis. They are targeting the Border Patrol. It feels like the rhetoric and the protesting is only ramping up. What is your advice to the people right now who are outraged that this is a second killing at the hands of Border Patrol in 2 weeks?
As Christy said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence.
And of course, he's completely wrong there because You absolutely do have the right to bring a gun to a protest. And that's one thing Greenwald goes on to talk about. And how dare these hypocritical Republicans say that we shouldn't be allowed to bring guns to a protest? The issue is not that he brought the gun to a protest, it's that this wasn't a protest, and he wasn't just carrying a gun casually. He was impeding law enforcement. That's a completely different set of circumstances.
Yeah, you can, the better talking point would be, yeah, you can bring a gun to a protest, but if you're then, being violent, if you're then impeding, if you then, presumably are reaching for the gun during a confrontation, that's the problem. Not that you had the gun in the first place, but, Kash Patel has never been too great with his talking points. Obviously, the Epstein files one being probably the worst thing I've ever heard from a bureaucrat. So I'm not surprised that the messaging, as we've talked about, the messaging from the administration is on sort of things like this are all over the place.
And what's so insane is this is absolutely the top national story. And if there was ever a time they should know to get their story straight, it's for this. Like, they had to have known this was going to be an absolute, like, above the fold top story for the next weeks or months or more. And this is when you need to be extremely rigorous in your messaging and to say, yeah, well, the issue is not that he carried a gun. The issue is that he assaulted an officer while also carrying a gun, and that the chaos that ensued because of these organized leftists. And again, but here's what Kristi Noem to say, another complete disaster. She's not good at anything except for murdering animals. Here's Kristi Noem.
In Minneapolis today that unfolded on the streets. It occurred with DHS law enforcement as they carried out their lawful duties to keep Americans safe in the threat of criminal illegal aliens in this country. At 9:05 a.m. Central Time, the Department of Homeland Security law enforcement officials and officers were conducting targeted operations in Minneapolis against an illegal alien whose criminal history included domestic assault with intentionally inflicting bodily harm, disorderly conduct, and driving without a valid license. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
Up until that point, what she said was more or less fine, but nothing she said up till this point justifies what she just said there. We saw the tape. It didn't look like he was trying to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement. It looked like he was basically, he had no control over the scene at all. And, had he maybe thought through the idea of impeding law enforcement while carrying a gun, this might not have happened. But they've just embellished the story. And they've just given the left all that they need to impeach Kristi Noem, Kash Patel. And, of course, where does our old pal Donald Trump fall in on all this? Well, he just goes ahead and throws them all under the bus. Here's Donald Trump. Hold on, I got to find this clip here. Okay, here we go. Here's Trump. This is talking about Renee Good.
And, they're going to make mistakes sometimes. ICE is going to be too rough with somebody, or, they're dealing with rough people. They're going to make a mistake. Sometimes it can happen terribly.
It sounds like he's conceding that it was an unlawful killing. Whoops. So would we not be absolute suckers to defend these law enforcement officers when the president doesn't have their back? He's throwing them under the bus. What's the point of any of this? This is just absolutely asinine. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's no consistency of message or talking points that are going out. It seems like it on this and a lot of different things. Everyone's all over the place. No one knows what's going on. You've heard different conflicting reports about how President Trump is pulling out of Minneapolis. Then you hear always doubling down,
like
sending it home in. and then he's talking with Governor Waltz and Mayor Frey, the people who have been overseeing this chaos and not allowing, basically allowing the left to take over and run the streets. Now you're having civil conversations with these people. I think what most Trump supporters want is for these people to be arrested, is for Walz to be arrested.
Here's Trump right here. Governor Tim Walz, the total crackpot who was Kamala Harris's running mate, called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call. Can you imagine? And we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. The governor, this is according to Trump, who's not known for telling the truth much, says, very respectfully understood that, and so I will be speaking with him in the near future. He was happy that Tom Homan was going to Minnesota, and so am I. But just a tremendous success in Washington and blah, 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 blah. And then here is I'm trying to find the clip of him talking to Jacob Fry. Just here someplace. Here we go. So here's the story. Jacob Fry outlines deal reached with Trump on Metro surge. And what they're saying is that they're going to scale back. They're going to scale back their enforcement. And Trump's saying, "Oh, what a great victory we have here. The Minnesota Democrats are literally guilty of sedition insurrection, barely an overstatement." And Trump is letting them get away with it, even rhetorically pretending they're cooperating and it wasn't them doing it. And yeah, by the way, here's another one. Here's Harmy Dillon, who I used to have respect for. Oh, he. Look at this. The left-wing attorneys general of D.C., Illinois, a bunch of other states, including Michigan, Dana Nessel, argued in 2024 that there's no Second Amendment right to carry guns at, quote, events involving political speech like political rallies and protests because they are so often targets of violence. So what are you trying to say, Harmeet? You're saying Dana Nessel is correct? Is that what you're saying? Because it sounds like you're saying.
I think it's one of those things where we're trying to own the libs by accusing them of hypocrisy. But you're accusing
yourself of hypocrisy is what you're doing.
You need to forcefully defend the Second Amendment in situations like this. When you don't, you're ceding more ground to the left.
Yeah, this is just folly. This is fodder for Glenn Greenwald. I don't know if any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign, Noam said. Really? I distinctively recall there being more than a couple protesters that carry guns.
Oh, those open carry rallies. We've had them in Michigan. They had that giant one several years back in Virginia that, hundreds of thousands of people were at.
All the gun rights groups are up in arms about this. Pardon the pun. So here's Eric Erickson with what he claims is going on. He says a lot of what's happening now is Kristi Noem marginalized Tom Homan at the head of Border Patrol because those two prioritize deportations of criminals and gang members, whereas Kristi Noem and Corey Lewandowski wanted broad public roundups without prioritizing the illegal aliens. By the way, Trump yet again, just a week or so ago, claimed about how he wants to amnesty all the farm workers. He said that again for like the third or fourth or fifth time.
And that's the big problem. That's the big problem is that if you really wanted to get rid of illegals and have them self-deport, what you would do is you would round up some of the people who are employing them, some of the big employers, ransack their businesses and have them do messy perp walks, have them, face millions of dollars in legal fees to be able to defend themselves, make some strong, prominent examples of those people who are employing illegals. And then suddenly other employers will get the message because they don't want that to happen to them. And the entire labor market will dry up for illegals and then they'll self-deport. But you don't see the Trump administration doing that. You don't see the Republican Party doing that because a lot of those employers are some of the entrenched lobbies in Washington, D.C., and they're cutting big checks for, re-election campaigns and the like. So that's the big problem. It's not
about politics. It's about PR with these people. So At the same time that Trump actually says we're not going to enforce the law for the, literally millions of farm workers. We're not going to deport any of them, which, by the way, let's not forget that once upon a time, even the left was very much opposed to illegal immigration, especially for farm workers. Like that was Cesar Chavez. That was the UFCW. That was them saying, that was Bernie Sanders saying that's a Koch brothers, amnesty is a Koch brothers position. No, we want to protect American workers. We don't want to give these jobs to foreign labor. Like they were all absolutely opposed to that. But now we have the so-called right, on one hand, condoning amnesty for the millions of illegal aliens who are the good ones, supposedly, but we're going to make a big show out of these, out of arresting the gang members for all the good that's done. I remember I said a few weeks ago when Renee Good was shot, I was like, I thought that was a good shoot, but the administration is not capable of handling this properly, and they have proven me right. Unfortunately, once again, this is going to blow. The politically, it's going to be a disaster for the Republicans, and we're seeing this all play out right now. What a mess. Yeah, here's another comment. How Republicans lost the midterms, telling 20 million Americans who carry guns legally for protection this administration views them all as murderers and terrorists. Stunningly tone deaf. Yeah, they really shit on the gun owners.
Yeah, Bessent's showing his
organized criminal left.
Bessent's showing his Soros training with that comment.
Yeah, and you know what else too? The other thing we have to point out is the juxtaposition between, on one hand, we have no difficulty going in, kidnapping Maduro because, according to all the reports, the military had intelligence on the ground. They knew who to turn. They knew exactly who to pay off. They disabled their military because they had infiltrated all of Venezuela's top government officials. They claimed that they got the vice president even to turn over the president, to the point that we just came in, murdered a bunch of bodyguards, and kidnapped them. They had no problem doing that whatsoever. Now Trump is saying we're totally ready to go attack Iran. We have no problem. We're gonna destroy Cuba too. All these things our government has no problem doing whatsoever. But when it comes to organized domestic impeding of law enforcement, almost to the point of being an insurrection, you contrast what the Trump administration does overseas, and also, by the way, with what the Biden administration did in January 6th. They had no problem striking fear into the heart of every single conservative. Don't you dare protest the illegitimacy of this election, or we're going to come destroy you. No problems whatsoever. But somehow the Trump administration can't seem to get control over an organized, funded, coordinated operation. What does that tell you about their priorities?
Well, the DOJ is looking into it. Another interesting thing that Kash Patel said was what Kash Patel was like, oh yeah, as soon as I saw that X post about from journalist Cam Higbee about the coordinated signal groups where they're coordinating all this domestic terror, as soon as I saw that post, I put a team on it. Well, why wasn't the team investigating already and finding this stuff out before it got to this point? So they're completely asleep at the wheel. And yeah, Kash Patel has probably been the most disappointing member of the cabinet by a mile.
I don't know, man. That's tough competition. They're all extraordinarily incompetent. Here's Tucker's take, by the way. Tucker claims that the Trump administration agreed to reduce immigration enforcement in Minnesota in exchange for cooperation and removing criminal illegals, and the Minnesota officials rejected this deal. Well, yeah, because they know they have the upper hand. That's why. So why would they accept it? This is hilarious for them. They're getting the best of both worlds. They're embarrassing the Trump administration. They're watching a PR debacle unfurl. They're watching Trump administration attacking the Second Amendment and the First Amendment. All this is just absolutely disastrously incompetent. So, my God, what a mess. Here's Bill Malugin, who is who's been working the immigration beat for Fox for many years. He says, since the shooting in Minnesota, I've talked to more than half a dozen federal sources involved in immigration enforcement, including several in senior positions, who all tell me they have grown increasingly uneasy and frustrated with some of the claims and narrative DHS pushed in the aftermath of the shooting. I'm told there is extreme frustration with DHS officials going on TV, putting out statements claiming that Alex Pretti was intending to conduct a massacre or wanted to carry out maximum damage. That's Kristi Noem who said that, even after numerous videos appeared to show these claims were inaccurate. While they say it was a terrible decision to show up with a gun and inject himself into a federal law enforcement operation, yes, there's no indication that he was there to murder federal law enforcement, as videos appear to show he never drew his holstered firearm. Yep. The sources say this messaging from DHS officials has been catastrophic from a PR and morale perspective, as it is eroding trust and credibility. Comparing it to when Democrats falsely claimed the border was closed or that Haitians were being whipped at the border. And this goes on. Awful all around, just disastrous. So there you go. Meanwhile, this popped up on my feed today. Here's no.
I will tell you this, brother.
What?
You know, I will tell you this. You raise your voice, I raise your voice.
If I raise my voice, you'll erase my...
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Are you serious? You said if I raise my voice, you'll erase my voice?
Yes. I will tell you this.
Yeah, smart guy. They got his face and everything. If you raise your voice, I will erase your voice, he says.
A good line, at least. You know, it sounds like something like Schwarzenegger might say in a movie.
Yeah, it's
The Eraser.
Yeah. Yeah. What an absolute disaster. What a shame.
I mean, I think that, you know, obviously it shows that, I think most Republican administrations wouldn't have even put up a fight on the illegal immigration issue. They would have punted completely. The Trump administration had the will to fight, but we're seeing in the streets right now that it's not going too well. And I hope that President Trump and the administration, what they're doing is kind of just backing off for a little while strategically to throw a little bit of cold water on the situation before they go in and ramp up enforcement later. But hopefully it's not what it looks like, which is it went really bad. Now they're pulling back, and now here's President Trump pushing the Iran stuff again. Now it's going to be Iran mania to get people's minds off of what's going on in the streets of Minneapolis and domestically, because then that'll be an even bigger loser in the midterms, because the foreign policy stuff and the new threats and going to war and ramping stuff up like that, that's not going to be effective. That's not going to be something that wins over voters, except the ones who are tuned in to Fox News and voting Republican already.
Yeah, it's just going from one PR disaster to the next. So, yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, well, first off, top of the thing is Kristi Noem is absolutely unfit to be DHS secretary. We called it. We called it when she first was picked. She's just some dumb bimbo. Well, she's no background to be the DHS secretary. It's just absolutely embarrassing. I guess she's now in hot water with Trump, so who knows? But what's Trump going to do? He doesn't know who to pick. He doesn't know any better. So, it's just another. I think this is going to fester like everything else does. So we'll see. Anyway, I think we've beaten this topic to death. Is there anything more we want to cover on this, or should we move on? So I want to talk about the WEF stuff.
Yeah, let's. I think we got everything. Let's move on.
All right. So, yeah, again, folks, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I know I'm going to always be accused of being anti-Trump, but the fact of the matter is, I don't make these headlines, guys. Like this is just what has happened. So it just is what it is. Anyway, so the WEF was the other big story this past week, which, man, I don't know. Well, I guess the big thing that kind of was going to happen, but then didn't really happen, or kind of sort of did, was Trump getting Greenland or not getting Greenland. So he went in, absolute guns a-blazing. We are going to take Greenland. By the way, speaking of that, I gotta say, I'm sure you guys have seen these memes that they've been posting. Here is one from the White House. Embrace the penguin, and there is Trump and a penguin there, and a flag of Greenland there. And then the Department of Education posted this one: educate the penguin, and there is some person, I guess, and some tiny penguins at tiny penguin desks. And a lot of people have pointed out that this is retarded because penguins are from Antarctica. They're not in the northern hemisphere at all. I gotta say, I think the administration know that. I think they knew that when they posted these things. I think this is actually, they are intentionally flaunting like unbelievable arrogance and stupidity in front of everyone's face. I think that's what that's really all about. Like, I think they did that intentionally. They're like, oh, this is top level trolling, man. Isn't that great? Look at that. We got the libs to comment about how like we don't know that penguins aren't in the North Pole. I think this is just unbelievable arrogance and stupidity is all it is. I don't know. What do you think about that, Shane?
Doesn't it have to do with that? Have you seen the penguin meme? The one where it's like shows a penguin, going. It's sort of like a documentary. The one penguin who walked away and like went into the wilderness. I think that's what it's referring to. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's
I haven't seen that. So maybe you're right.
Because I haven't seen it on X, but I've seen a lot of it on Instagram. So if you're not on Instagram, maybe you haven't seen it. So I think that's what it's referring to.
I haven't seen it. Yeah. Here's the White House again. The penguin does not concern himself with the opinions of those who cannot comprehend. Again, I think this is just bald-faced arrogance and conceit, and it's just so obnoxious and unprofessional, unpresidential, embarrassing, stupid. But going into this, we've talked about Greenland before, so the whole notion that we need it for national defense is complete utter bullshit. But the funny thing is, and the lead up to the WEF, Russia was going hard in egging Trump on. So here was here's this is some sort of famous Russian news person, but this was like all over the Russian media. If he gets Greenland, Trump will go down in history as one of the great American presidents. If Trump were to consummate a purchase of Greenland, he would almost certainly secure a place in both American and global history. And this goes on about how amazing it would be for America to take Greenland. Putin himself got in on the action. He was literally doing an interview, and he's like, yeah, well, if you consider how big Alaska was and how much the U.S. paid for Alaska, and in 2025 dollars, and for the scale for the size of Greenland, it couldn't possibly cost more than $1 billion to buy Greenland. Like, Putin was actually saying, he had all the mathematical equations pulled up and was like calculating exactly how much it would cost in dollars to buy Greenland for what the price of Alaska would have been, and this would be great. He says, yeah, they can have it. We don't want it.
And what's funny, that kind of reminds me, I was on Indian TV.
Oh yeah?
They have like a English language version of Indian TV that sometimes they invite me on to talk with like all these people from around the world. So I was on there and we're talking about Greenland, and they had like this cartoonishly like Russian pro-Putin guy on, and that's kind of what he said. It's like when we see you against each other, EU versus US, we Russians laugh. We love it. Keep it up.
Yeah, well, that's what it's all about. Is this? They're loving it because it's destroying the relations between the US and the Europeans, which I think. I mean, that's the one thing about the WEF, the whole event as a whole that I loved was it was just nothing but shitting on Europeans, like from start to finish. It was hilarious. The funny thing, well, obviously Trump's speech was just shitting on Europe. But also, who else shit on Europe the entire time was Zelensky. Zelensky got up there. He wasn't even supposed to be there. And Trump like summoned him. Trump was like, I'm going to meet with Zelensky here tomorrow. And so Zelensky showed up. He was in a lousy mood. He gives this speech and he is just furious. He's yelling about he's mad at Russia, he's mad at America, he's mad at Europe. The Europeans are weak and can't do anything, and he shits all over the Europeans. And then he storms off the stage, and they jump up and applaud him and give him a standing ovation. Oh yeah, Zelensky, you're so wonderful. It's hilarious.
Well, he's mad because he's no longer the belle of the ball. Now it's Greenland that the EU cares about, and that they're summoning their forces against the evil fascist takeover of Greenland. That's kind of taking the air out of the room, and now no one's talking about Zelensky and getting him more foreign aid to continue that war, and buy more gold toilets for his cronies or whatever alleged cocaine addiction he has. So, he's really mad about no longer being the apple of the eye of these EU bureaucrats. And the whole Greenland thing is, it's kind of like something that's a bit of a sideshow. But if it can cause the deterioration of relations between the U.S. and EU so much that it somehow gets the United States out of NATO, it could be all worth it. It could be the greatest thing that's happened, because if we get out of NATO, and we're quote unquote more isolated from the the globalist cabal over there in Europe, that would be a tremendous. That would make President Trump's foreign policy legacy, maybe by accident, but that would be a wet dream. Let's get out of the UN too. That would be the wet dream of the more Ron Paul oriented non-interventionists. So I'm hoping that it keeps going, just because who knows what the impact might be. It could be World War III though too. So who knows? Yeah.
Well, the other. Well, actually, before I get to the other speech, I was going to just to get back to talking about Greenland for a second. So Trump went in. We're going to acquire Greenland, which, as I talked about on the show a couple weeks ago, no question, this is all about acquiring the territory, so Trump can be in history books as the president that expanded the American territory. And he didn't get that, but somehow he comes out and says, "Yeah, we got everything we wanted from Greenland. They said they'll let us put our military bases there, which they already did. We're gonna have some kind of mining deal. Which, so what? I mean, to me, it sounds like he gave up. Like which is hard to believe. Now maybe he'll just come back in a few weeks and start talking about acquiring Greenland again. But it kind of looks like the Europeans won this round, because Trump, he did not get what he really wanted. He really wanted to take Greenland, and he didn't get Greenland. He got some agreements to use Greenland, which is not the same at all.
Well, I mean, I think he's talking about it, like it's a win. So maybe that's kind of the deal, is he gets a little bit more of Greenland, or gets more, of whatever some of the things he wanted, while kind of just letting go the push to acquire.
That's like what Trump got from Greenland was a win. Meaning what exactly? Doesn't matter. It's just a win. What we get? Nothing. It's a win. It's a meaningless nothing burger, but he gets to say, I got a win, because they agreed to something nebulous and amorphous and with no particular terms whatsoever. I mean, this whole thing is just, to me, this is all just another. We went from Greenland was like nothing at all to just being a medium to long-term problem we now have to deal with for some reason. I fail to see any strategic value in Greenland, honestly. I think this is all complete BS about, we can intercept Russian missiles from Greenland if we put our golden dome there. It's complete nonsense. There's no golden dome. There's no anything. We're going to harvest rare earths there. The harvesting rare earths, the thing about rare earths is not that they're not the harvesting of them, it's the refinement of them that we don't know how to do, that China does. That's the problem. We haven't fixed any problem strategically with any of this jibber jabber with Greenland. It just kind of seems to have disappeared now. So who knows?
The more Trump is thinking about Greenland, the less he's thinking about Iran. So keep the Greenland thing going.
Well, Iran's apparently back on the agenda now, so we'll see what happens. But I don't know. What else happened? Oh, so the other big story in the WEF was Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister's speech, which it wasn't just that he said that the globalist world order is collapsing because of Trump. He said the globalist the whole globalist vision was always a lie. He said. And in fact, I'll play I got a clip. I'll play what Mark Carney said. Hold on, let me find. I've got a clip here. I think. One sec. This was the Prime Minister of Canada at Davos.
We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false. That the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient. That trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
So that was Mark Carney. Now, Mark Carney, to be clear, absolutely is a globalist. He's a total insider, bankster, all that. I think he's from what, BlackRock or one of those giant multinational corporations. Anyway, but well, first off, I mean, Trump is obviously furious about that. Also, the Europeans were furious because he basically called them a bunch of quislings.
For what pretentious, arrogant drivel. Made me sick listening to it. Reminded me of those academics I'd hear, the liberal academics you'd hear prattle off in university. So, yeah, just...
Well, I think, to the extent that he's just bitching about the fact that he's being pushed around by Trump, yeah, sure. But the thing was, he's actually kind of confessing, maybe not intentionally, but he really just basically just came right out and just said, yeah, all that, the whole rules-based order is a bunch of BS. So
you don't say.
Yeah. But for them to admit it at the WEF stage, no less. I mean, I have to say, the WEF was something that I think the globalists looked forward to every year as where they go to plot how they're going to destroy the world and enslave the global population. I think this year every single day was agony for them. it was, and you love to see it, although you feel bad for the poor people that live in these countries. But
and I think that's the thing about Trump is, we can talk about what's going on a day-to-day basis and the policies and how some of them are backfiring. But I think the best thing about Trump is he kind of puts a lot of these leaders, for lack of a better word, these globalists into a bind. He puts a lot of pressure on them. He kind of drags them down into the muck and humiliates them, turns them into clowns, whether wittingly or unwittingly. And that's kind of probably the best thing about him is that he drags these guys down into the dirt and makes the whole rules-based international order. These sort of talking points become completely ridiculous and obsolete to the point of where even an insider like Mark Carney has to admit it.
Yeah. By the way, yes, people, I know we are now live on Facebook, but Facebook was acting up, and I think the stream's gonna be broken or something is not working right on Facebook tonight. I'll try to upload the video separately later. Okay, one more topic I want to cover tonight, which is some recent votes in Congress. But real quick, Base Gen Xer wants to know, curious if you will talk about Scott McMahon's latest Substack post. I have not read Scott McMahon in a very long time, and frankly, I found Scott McMahon is basically writing a narrative to fit what basically is, broadly speaking, the establishment Republican agenda. Like, that's all he does is support whoever the popular establishment Republican types are, and he just
bingo
writing to that story. So I don't know what his latest thing is, but I assume it's just more of the same of that. Anyway, so some stories now from Washington, D.C. We have not had much in Lansing this past week. Let me just look at, since I didn't do a stream last Sunday, I will just briefly show you guys what has happened in Lansing, although it's very little, and then we can look at Washington stuff. So very little new stuff in the past week in Lansing. I did add a new feature to rescuemichigan.com, and that is that now on Operation Washington, there's a 7 days in Lansing page, which now also, when it lists the votes, mentions if it's the first chamber or the second that it passed, because that way you know if it's probably going to the governor, or maybe it's going to die in the other chamber. So again, not much of anything special. There's some new bills here. Nothing much. And there's some votes, but again, not a whole lot to talk about. Yeah, all very minor. The biggest thing was the cell phone ban in schools. We talked about that last week when it passed in the House. So anyway, not much in Lansing. In Washington, however, there have been some major votes. Not only was the Department of Education not abolished, but got an increase in funding, plus a prohibition on transferring that money to anywhere else. Democrats are celebrating purse string talks, executive order BS walks. Also, there was this vote. Every House Republican but one, Thomas Massie, voted to fund the liberals' favorite censorship agency in the DHS bill. I'm the one Republican who voted no. So Republicans voted to keep funding the liberals' favorite censorship agency, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. So there you go. So that happened. And then there was a big vote on the kill switch, the kill switch in your car, that if your car decides you're driving too erratically and you should not be allowed to drive your car anymore, there's an amendment by none other than the great Thomas Massie, one of the few Republicans who actually does anything in Washington. And it was to defund the federally mandated automobile kill switch. 57 Republicans joined 211 Democrats to defeat it. You can check the roll call to see how your representative voted. And John James voted with the Democrats. Here is the full vote. So if you look in Michigan, why is it showing me these other states? I just told it to show me just Michigan. Do I have to hold on? Okay, here we go. So here you go. The Republicans who voted for the amendment, John James, who wants to be our governor, was the only Republican in the Michigan delegation who voted against Thomas Massie's amendment for the automobile kill switch. He must want that Trump endorsement badly. That's what John James wants.
And John James, he's the anointed governor candidate. He doesn't have to debate. He doesn't have to show up in the grassroots. We'll have a town hall where the public isn't made aware of where the event's even being held, for John James, with party insiders only, because he's being protected, because he's being coronated, and we all know who's being coronated to be the Senate candidate, Mike Rogers. So that's who the money wants. John James for governor, Mike Rogers for Senate. So we're being led down the primrose path to destruction yet again by the establishment. And who will be at fault? Who will be the blame? In the end, it'll be the grassroots. So the same familiar game is being played once again, and unfortunately, and now it's somehow worse than it's ever been.
Yep.
So that's where we're at, heading into the midterms in Michigan.
Yep. Another vote. Thomas Massie says every Republican who voted for the DHS bill, which was everyone but me, enabled gender-affirming care earmarks. That means sexually mutilating children, and the automobile kill switch mandate to pass the House. And then here's another one. Rand Paul notes that despite widespread concerns about abuse in refugee assistance programs, 192 House Republicans voted to continue roughly $5 billion in refugee welfare funding. Only 24 Republicans voted no. So here is the list of those who voted to pass it. And of course, there's John James on the list. There's John Molinar. There's Tim Walberg. Who else do we have? Where's what's her face? Lisa McClain. Yep, she's on there. So Bergman, of course. Yep, they're all on there.
Well, keep voting Republican, because if we don't, then all these bad, awful things will happen, and then you vote Republican. You show up, you ignore this stuff, and they just keep voting to screw you over and over again, and then you keep giving them your consent to do it with your vote by refusing to even put up a token primary. In some of these cases, you just empower these people, and they know that you're in their back pocket, and they'll never have any sort of consequences for anything that they do. And that's exactly why we're in the current situation that we're in.
Yeah. So here you see how the Republicans are spinning this. Thomas Massie voted with Democrats against funding DHS and President Trump's mass deportations. What mass deportations? And of course, as Robert Barnes notes, there's also this bill funds Somali self. There's all kinds of garbage in these bills. The default position should be no. And then here we also have one more. We got one more. Rhino betrayal. 76 House Republicans joined all Democrats to block Amendment number 2 on HR 7148, which will now allow for the funding of Senate earmarks for abortions, gender mutilation surgeries on minors, DEI programs, partisan pork projects. And here's the list, which in Michigan, I note, includes John James, John Molinar, and Tim Walberg. So there you go. That was that amendment number 2. And there you see the Republicans, those Republicans just named, joining with the 215 Democrats to kill that amendment.
And you got to remember, it's worse than just 75 of them. They're all taking orders from different special interests. They're all working for the same team, the uniparty team. And 75 of them will take the hit here. Another 50 of them will take the hit there. They play musical chairs so they can shift blame as they sell us out. It's all a big coordinated scam. It's a scheme. It's not getting any better. And by going along with the ruse and letting them pull the wool over your eyes and keep showing up to vote for these rhinos, you are complicit in the bankrupting and the ruination of this country. That's what Republicans are being forced to indulge in. And if you go against it, then a lot of grassroots people in the Republican Party these days will have their knives out and want to destroy you. So that's the situation. It's ugly, it's bad, and it's going to be getting a whole lot worse headed into the midterms.
Yeah, whenever these people come with the begging bowl in their hand, asking for your money, your vote, your support, remind them that Trump has so many millions to spare that he's spending them, blowing them, attacking Thomas Massie. So fuck off. That's all I got to say to them. So yeah, there's that. I've got other stuff, but I think we've had a pretty long stream tonight already, and we've covered a lot of turf. So I think maybe I'll save the rest for Sunday, which will probably get blown off because we'll probably have to talk about the war with Iran at that point. But we'll see, I suppose. It's been it's been a cold week. I'm still under the weather, but it's been pretty chilly out. It's been a tough week. So hopefully things will start to warm up soon, because it's been a tough winter.
Sounds good. I want to plug one thing before we wrap up. Send you the
absolutely.
URL. We're having an event, Grand New Party Pack. It's putting on our Washington Day dinner. The theme is Patriots Vindicated. We have Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers. He'd been worked for Ron Paul too, back in the 1990s. Cool. So constitutional attorney, very smart man. Also, Joe Biggs, who was a Proud Boys organizer. Both of these guys, he was there at January 6th. Both these guys were charged with seditious conspiracy and given over, I think, over 15 years in both cases to rot away in prison for non-crimes. President Trump, who I know the Rescue Michigan podcast can be critical of, to his great credit, pardoned all of the J6ers or gave them all clemency.
He did do that. He did do that. Yes,
absolutely. So both these men will be there and talk about what they have experienced when they were behind bars and everything related to January 6th. And it'll be a great event, and hopefully inspire people to keep fighting, even when the odds are completely against you. When when things are at their bleakest, to keep hope, to keep faith, to keep fighting for liberty, for true liberty, not to get a bunch of rhinos elected so you can get a pat on the head at your local convention of phonies and assholes in whatever district or county party, blah, blah, blah. So check out Patriots Vindicated 2026.
Yep.
GNPpack.us and get your tickets. It's coming up in Redford, Michigan on Friday, February 20th, and I hope to see you there.
Sounds great, man. Yep. GNPpack.us. There you go. Awesome. Well, Shane, thank you for joining me tonight. It's been, it's been another week. But,
it's been great. It's been fun.
Uplifting
Uplifting,
to
as
talk
always.
to you about, and not feel like I'm the only one out in the world losing my mind here and watching all this shit show just unravel. So here's what it is. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Stay strong. Thanks as always for Audio for Liberty. Stay warm too. Until next time,